Hi everyone, I'm Jennifer. Welcome back to Elevating Women in Entertainment. Today we have with us somebody very special, an ally, Dr. John J. Chin. He is the appointed Interim Dean of the Asian American Asian Research Institute, or ARI, at CUNY, the City University of New York. He has a lot of very interesting research he's going to speak with us about, as well as talking about how national DEI issues are affecting education right now. So a lot of meaty stuff to get into. We're going to take you live right to RE CUNY, and I'm going to be having two of my colleagues today, Gina and Anoushka, assist in the interview. So let's get into it. Well, thank you, everybody. We are here with Dean Chin. We're so excited to be here. Fellow Cornellian, go Big Red. So could you start by just telling everybody a little bit about yourself, your background?
Yeah, sure. So I'm the Dean of the CUNY Asian American Asian Research Institute, also known as ARI. We're a CUNY-wide institute that elevates the stories and voices of Asian American Pacific Islander communities in New York City and elsewhere. We're a CUNY-wide institute that serves all 25 campuses across CUNY, but we're based under Queens College, which is one of the senior colleges of CUNY.
Fantastic. Well, I have Anoushka and I have Gina who are assisting with the interview today. So perhaps we'll start with you, Anoushka, if you want to tell the viewers a little bit about yourself as well, and then we can get right into it.
Yeah. Hi everyone, my name is Anoushka Sharma. I'm a student at Barnard College and a social media intern here at the Film Lab.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Gina Matos. I'm a recent grad from Rice University, double majoring in English and Asian Studies, and I'm also a social media intern.
Yeah. So thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah,
my first question is kind of just relating to kind of everything that's going on in the world and in our country right now, and I'm curious, what does your role mean to you at a time where DEI is under attack, and what do you think your message is to students like myself who kind of are feeling discouraged about the current state of academic freedom and suppression of speech and protests?
One thing that people have to understand is that Asian Americans are Americans, right? So a lot of maybe what we're seeing has to do with not understanding the histories of all our communities, how they've contributed to this country, how they continue to contribute to this country. And, you know, we're really diverse community, many different generations. A lot of us were born here, some of us are third and fourth generation Asian Americans, other folks are immigrants. It's just a wide range of stories, so you can't sort of say everybody's just one thing, right? So one of the things that we try to do here is try to really educate the public about, you know, what are Asian American communities, like who are they, what have they done, what are the issues that they're facing, what are their contributions to this country. And I feel like maybe that kind of conversation can maybe open up some of the needed dialogue to address some of the divisions that we're seeing right now.
I think that's been a big issue, like with Film Lab, talking about the lens, you know, the lens through which we see our country and ourselves. What is an American? This is something we were talking about a little while ago, but how so many people often interchangeably use American with white, right? He is American, but they mean he is white, which is worrisome. So in terms of storytelling and how we present our stories to the world, which as you say, educates and informs everybody else as to who we are as a people, right? What are some of the things that CUNY, that specifically RE CUNY, is doing right now to raise that awareness?
You know, what you said about Americans being equated to white, my own parents would use that kind of formulation. Like, oh, those are John's American friends, meaning my white friends. Yes. So it's very deeply embedded in our understanding, and really related to this concept of the perpetual foreigner also, that Asian Americans, no matter how long you've been here, are still considered a foreigner. What do we do to educate or raise awareness? We have a weekly public lecture series. So every Friday night we bring in an author, an artist, an academic to talk about their work. We do that almost every week throughout the academic year. We have more than 400 recorded lectures on our website, so people who don't, who have missed the session could come and see it for themselves. We hold an annual conference. So last year we held a conference on Asian Americans and mental health.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a theme that changes every year. And a lot of that was, focused on what's the impact of the current climate, the political climate on, how people feel about themselves and how people are getting by and that sort of thing. We also published this journal called the CUNY Forum. It's a forum to highlight writings of researchers, academics, activists, community service providers, and artists, and that comes out about once or twice a year. It's really wonderful. A volume that's edited by the former longtime editor of Amerasia Journal, which is really one of our seminal Asian American Studies journals.
And how do you recommend people address it? And Anoushka and Gina, feel free to jump in. But so, for example, going back to the American comment, I was on set and a white male director, kept referring to white actors as Americans and the Asian actors as Asians, right? And so I was an actor, and as an actor, you're kind of not in a super powerful position.
Yeah.
So I waited till the break, and then I asked if I could speak to him. And I said, hey, I know you don't mean anything by it, but when you're saying Americans and you mean just the white actors, it's creating a little bit of a bad feeling because the rest of us are also Americans, right?
Yeah.
And he was like, to his credit, he was genuinely shocked. He was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And he went out, he apologized to everybody and kept doing it. And then one of my friends said, oh, well, you're never gonna work with him again. Like, he's gonna be angry. But he was not. I worked with him many times after that.
Yeah.
So that was a nice sort of story about how you can sort of talk about it in a non-combative way, as long as both sides are receptive and open to listening.
Yeah.
But I find that it can be hard right now when people are stuck in their bubbles and, this idea, for example, as Anoushka was saying, of DEI being a bad thing, diversity is a bad thing, equality is a bad thing, inclusion is a bad thing. How can that be? Or that extremely privileged, historically, groups are somehow being robbed of something. And sort of what is motivating that, and how both students and those in academia can try to navigate what's going on right now to try to not just create constructive discourse, but also to correct the problem.
Yeah,
it's a big question.
That's a big question. I mean, well, first, it sounds like you handled that situation really well. I mean, and you got a great response. That's sort of a model response,
great, yeah.
I'd say. Yeah. To your other question, I think it's really complicated because I think to some degree there is a feeling from one group that they're losing something, like you said, and so it's very threatening. And whether that's true or not, that's going to trigger, I think, a really kind of extreme response. But I don't know, I mean, I think it comes to the question of what's a good society, right? So is a good society a society where people feel like there are hierarchies of value of different kinds of people? I mean, is that really the kind of society that we want? And so if it means certain groups having to share a bit in terms of like either resources or just even recognition and respect, I feel like that's something as a society we should really aim for. So I don't think there's like an easy answer to that question, because I think when a group seeks visibility or recognition or equality, I think there's always going to be pushback to that.
Kind of just building off of that, I'm curious like what it means to you to be an ally, I guess, when so much, as Jennifer just said, that oftentimes there's fear of retribution when maybe as students you have like worries or claims that you want to bring up to like teachers, professors, or people higher up. And so I'm curious what you see as like your role as being supportive to students, or even like being a male ally, or what allyship means to you.
These are great questions. I guess allyship to me means when you have a position of relative privilege in relation to somebody else, that, you know, when you see somebody struggling or somebody being mistreated, that you would maybe leverage that position that you have to help out or to intervene. So if that means, you know, making space for a group of people, or helping that person speak up, or speaking up, you know, in conjunction with that person, I think those are different ways you could be a good ally.
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who's like, I love this guy's writing, like love,
Yeah.
love, love. He wrote one time, he said, he was talking about racism, and he said, if every white person were to speak up every single time you heard any off-the-cuff comment that was racist or sexist, like in the locker room, in a board meeting, at the club, like whatever, if you did it every single time, not necessarily like, I'll kill you for saying that, like, but just if you were like, dude, like what, you know, every single time, he's like, if every white person did that, racism would be gone. I love that, and I strive to do that, although it can be very, very difficult, because it can be very difficult to do it in a non-combative manner, and I think that's one of the things that like the Asian Studies program or African Studies or all of these, you know, educational offerings that we still sort of have are so valuable for, because they provide a safe space in which to have these discussions that may be very uncomfortable in the, you know, outside world.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking, we're talking about like the importance of even just everyday interactions, but my question kind of is more pertaining to representation in media and entertainment, because representation, I mean, as we know, we hear this all the time, and I feel like sometimes people are even sick of hearing this, but it's insanely true that representation in the media, representations of how we depict all sorts of groups, all sorts of demographics really, really matters in terms of how that translates into our everyday lives. So this is really focused on your independent research that you did. Your NIH-funded research examined the working conditions and HIV risks of Asian immigrant women and massage parlors in particular. And so I wanted to ask, how do you think mainstream media representations of these women align or misalign with the realities you observed in your research? And what do you think are the broader social or policy consequences of these portrayals? Big shift. But
yeah. I would say that the media is kind of split in a way. So there's one side of the media that looks at this group of people, you know, Asian immigrant women working in massage parlors. They're often sex workers. There's this sort of narrative around they're all trafficked, they're all victims, and we have to go and rescue them. And I think many cases have shown that that doesn't always work out so well. The rescue becomes almost like a re-victimization, because it's like arresting them or you know, really putting them on trial. And also many of the women don't think of themselves as victims, and so by being quote unquote rescued, they're really being denied the path they chose to earn a living. And then there's the other track, which I think is much it's a lot more enlightened, I would say, you know, trying to understand that these women are real people, that their daughters, their mothers, their wives, they often have young children that they're living with, they're often married, you know, they have a family life. A lot of the women in our study, they were trying to earn a living to support their families. You know, I would say that I'd say most of the women would not have chosen this path of work if they had other choices, but many of them are undocumented, many of them have limited English proficiency, and so this became a path for them to earn a living wage in a situation where they had very, very few choices. You know, after the Atlanta shootings, which were horrendous, I did see a lot of very sensitive coverage in the media, and I was really surprised. A lot of the journalists who contacted us about our study really want to look at it within a frame of a sort of racialized and gendered situation that these women are in, facing racism and sexism, and they wanted to understand their stories within that context.
Kind of bouncing off of that with the sort of the way that women are portrayed, we can just look at women generally as a gender.
Yeah.
And a lot of us in entertainment, we joke that it's the 4 S's, right? We're either silent, sexy, subservient, or stupid. And if there's some really interesting data that's come out in terms of when we're looking at American, particularly content, how much speaking the women do.
Yeah.
So, for example, in Mulan, the dragon had more lines than Mulan
really?
did. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
But then when you add color on top of that, it creates a whole new dynamic. And actually, a lot of people were talking about that in terms of the most recent presidential election, because we had a white male and we had a woman of color.
Yeah.
So she sort of had that double whammy, but that kind of killed her. And it's really depressing to think that we're in this year, and that for somebody that's otherwise, a qualified, capable, competent person would be the thing that might push you over the edge.
Yeah.
When you were doing this research, did you look kind of at media portrayals of these women and how they're portrayed just generally? Was that at all part of the inquiry?
We did understand the industry that these women worked in as being highly influenced by this idea of sort of like the sexual fetishization of Asian women. That was definitely a part of it. And the women also were aware of this as well. And so in some ways they would, one of the women that we talked to said, well, if that's the way people see me, I should just use it to my advantage. And so she kind of thought of it as a way she could earn more tips or, have clients and that sort of thing. So she wanted to kind of turn it on its head and sort of use it as a tool to make money.
Have any of you seen Get Millie Black?
No.
Highly recommend.
Okay.
It's a UK Jamaican production, and it's about a Jamaican detective who used to work for the Met, working in Jamaica. And there's a young girl, so they're looking into this human trafficking case, and a young black girl they think has been kidnapped by this white predator.
Yeah.
But I don't want to do any of the spoilers, but when you kind of scrape down, the girl thinks she's empowered. The girl thinks she's the one that got this guy. It's a really it's a very nuanced and complex look at gender roles and racial structures. But I'd love your thoughts actually on how we can use both media and education, and where they kind of cross over to look at that. Because if we want to talk about, especially in the context of sex work, for example, there's people that say this is completely degrading, it's horrible, nobody should be in this, nobody wants to be in it.
Yeah.
And then there are people that say, no, I do want to be in it, I find it empowering, and I'm going to use this, this is this stereotype, fine, I'm going to take this and I'm going to maximize my tips or whatever it may be. What is the right way for what is the right way for both in terms of education, how we talk about it, how we dialogue about it, how we research it, and then how do we want to see it in entertainment media?
In this particular context, I do think it's really important to have a variety of stories. I think that's partly what I saw in terms of the really polarized debate that you pointed out, is that it didn't leave room for a lot of real people's stories. And the real people's stories are usually pretty complex. And I think it raises a lot of questions about who gets to decide who's a victim or who's empowered. I think part of that, you have to allow the person to say, how they feel about their own situation. Because otherwise you're taking agency away from them. Yeah.
Spoken like a true ally.
I think similarly to your question about women of color, I was curious how you kind of view the intersectionality of these issues as important to your research, because I think oftentimes we see stereotypes like the model minority myth lead people to believe that like an Asian American working class community doesn't even exist at all, which of course is not true.
Yeah.
Or even when we see media representations of sex work, we rarely see women that are not white. And so I'm curious what the intersectionality of these issues means to you, and if that was important to you in your research.
It's really important. I mean, Asian women in sex work, I think, have a really different experience than white women in sex work, and also for Latina and Black women in sex work, there are very different experiences. A lot of the, I don't know, when we talk about sex worker rights and that kind of thing, there are a lot of Asian women in sex work who subscribe to that. I mean, it's not that they're not on board with that. Many of them are, but many of their issues are kind of way before that. It's like, I'm undocumented, I need legal assistance. I don't speak English well, I need language instruction, or I need job training and that kind of thing. And so the conversation that they have among themselves, I think, is really different from the conversation that white women might have about their situation.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point about intersectionality, because I mean, with like Anora, like winning Best Picture in the last year was a big topic of discussion. A movie winning Best Picture that its main protagonist was a sex worker, a female sex worker, but she was white. And I think often cases when we need a breakthrough for some kind of representation for a certain life experience or demographic, it usually starts with the experience of somebody who is white. And I think intersectionality is really important to have more of in the media, because I know that in academia and research, that's a big point, I think, of discussion and making sure that that is covered. I think that that's just an upcoming, like, important subject that is addressed, but it needs to be equally as addressed in media as well. I don't think it's nowhere near that, but yeah, just
Agree.
Absolutely.
Well, I know we're kind of running low on time. Did either of you have any other questions? No? Well, do you, just for viewers, if you could just tell them a little bit, like I know you already mentioned the lecture series and all the other things, how people can get involved, because one of the things that we're really trying to do is to sort of push this content beyond niche audiences and to really try to mainstream the content so that we do get diversified dialogue and people with different viewpoints talking to each other. It's helpful, it's a good thing. How can people get involved? How can they learn more about the lecture series and other resources that CUNY offers?
I mean, I'd say the best way is to go to our website, aaari.info. And so it has our whole calendar there, all the events that are coming up. And so come to our lecture series, come to our public events, maybe contribute writing to our various publications. We also have a K through 12 AAPI curriculum development project. It's called the Localized History Project. And so we're working alongside the Asian American Education Project with City Council funding to develop this curriculum for New York City schools. And that's one way, I think, of continuing to elevate Asian American voices and bring awareness to our stories, because this is starting in public school, and so trying to start early with raising awareness about our communities. So that's one thing.
That's fantastic.
And I also want to let you know about an organization that Ari supports. It's a CUNY-based organization founded by a few of our board members and some CUNY faculty. It's called Asian American Mentoring, providing opportunities for women for empowerment and resilience. So Empower.
Empower, that would be easier to
Asian American Mentorship, providing opportunities for women for empowerment and resilience. So it's all about women, particularly Asian American women, supporting other Asian American women in navigating the career path through academia, navigating microaggressions and whatever comes up in their work. So that's something that Ari has been supporting as well. In our gala in June of 2025, we honored Asian American women in politics, and we gave awards to New York City Council member Linda Lee and New York State Assembly member Grace Lee. And the whole idea, was that Asian American women are really very visibly in leadership these days in New York City, New York State, and beyond. And they're really transforming our communities. They're the leading voices of our communities, and so we wanted to celebrate them.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you so much. Thank you, Gina. Thank you, Anoushka. Thank you, Dean Chin.
Thank you.
So appreciate having
Yeah.
you. And everybody check it out online. And hopefully you can take advantage of some of these great resources.